All right. Good morning and welcome to the Utopian Day, August 11th. So we're back on track. We're back onto the 7 a.m.s after a couple days. So yeah, yesterday we had some family stuff going on, and everything is all right. So thanks for understanding. We did a late night show last night, almost like our after darks or our Utopian Baseball Universe reports. We got you guys pretty much all caught up with all the Tuesday action, and now we're back on track. So we're going to start a new tradition today. It's hard to believe actually. The Utopian Cafe is I want to say I don't know, 5 weeks in. I don't even remember the debut day anymore. I think it was late June. But it is Wednesday, August 11th, and we're going to start a new tradition. Every Wednesdays going forward, we're going to do top 5 Wednesdays. So I'm going to reveal a category. I'm going to count down, I guess, from 5 to 1. And then I want to hear what your top 5s are for the category. And if you're typing within the show, I'll show your comments on screen. But we're going to get to that here shortly. A couple things before we get started. Number one, and I've been talking about this now for about a week or so, Trivia Final is coming up Monday, August 16th. Which is Andrew Pfeffer's birthday. So, Andrew, if you got nothing going on of course you have something going on in your birthday, but if you can join us at 8 o'clock, I'd love to have you on camera with us. We've got Greg Maternowski, Madison McIntyre, Tim St. Clair, James Silverglad, Geeker Cruisin, and Brett Bamford. One of those gentlemen's walking out with a $50 gift card. So I'm excited about that. We're going to actually unveil the categories, the innings, if you will, for trivia on Friday's show. Friday's cafe, if you will, with Stan Phillips, by the way. Stan Phillips will be here. And that's at 7:30 on Friday. So again, yeah, trivia is coming up on the 16th, the championship. All right, let's get to our top 5, our first ever top 5. Now, I put a lot of thought actually into this yesterday. This top 5 that I'm going to reveal is pretty fluid. I mean, the order is almost trivial, but I wanted to well, let's just reveal the topic. The first ever top 5 Utopian Cafe top 5 favorite players of all time. So this is not the best players. This is just your personal favorite players of all time. Now, when I think of just when I hear the phrase favorite player, I tend to think of players either that fall under 2 categories. Either one, players I think of from childhood, because that's when I fell in love with the game when I was a kid. So 3 of these players were favorites of mine as kids. And then 2 of my top 5 are players that I never saw play, but I've read about, I've heard about, that I would have wanted to see play. The reason I don't have any current players on the list is because I like, for a list like this, I want to, I guess, have a player finish their career before I, put them on any type of historic type of list. But before I get to my top 5, I'm going to name some honorable mentions, and some of those will be some current players. And again, this list, like 5 could have been 1 could have been 5. But I'll go into a little bit of my reasoning for the way I listed them here in a second. But some honorable mentions. One guy that I loved a ton, whose career was cut way short. I think he only pitched about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years in the league at the start of this century, is Mark Pryor for the Chicago Cubs. He was a guy that every time I saw that he was pitching, I stopped what I was doing. I made plans to watch him pitch. If I'm not mistaken, I think he only pitched for the Cubs. I think he tried to come back maybe with the Dodgers, or maybe he's coached with the Dodgers. I don't know why that image of him in a Dodgers cap is creeping up. But Mark Pryor's an honorable mention. He's one of my favorite pitchers of all time. I pitched, so I tend to gravitate towards the pitchers. You'll see I only have one in my top 5. It's one of those, where musicians want to be ball players want to be musicians. So you'll see on my list, I only have one pitcher, but Mark Pryor is definitely in that honorable mention category. A guy who probably would have made my top 5 before I read his book, Lenny Dykstra. Lenny Dykstra as a kid, I just loved Lenny Dykstra. One of the first gloves I ever bought was modeled after the Regent glove that he used in the big leagues. And then I read his book and I was like, oh, I don't know. It doesn't change the memories, but I decided not to put him in my top 5. Teddy Aguirre, probably my favorite pitcher growing up. Gary Carter, loved Gary Carter. Howard Johnson. Ted Williams, I think, would be on a list of guys that I would have wanted to see play. I mean, I could name 1,000 players. As far as current players right now, or I should say, I guess more modern players. Ichiro, Willie Thomas is just so fun to watch. I didn't realize what an energy guy he was when the Brewers traded for him. Robin Yount. I mean, again, I could go on forever, but let's get to my top 5, and then I'd like to hear yours. At number 5, I have Rob Deere. So back in 1983, and I won't say his name, you know who he is, and he's going to be later on this list. My favorite player was traded from the Brewers, and this was the year I started watching baseball, Major League Baseball. And I was just crushed. And it took me almost 3 years to come up with a new favorite. Not that I was like down on baseball or anything, but after Gorman was traded, the Brewers were really bad in '84. They weren't very good in '85. I don't remember how well they did in '86, but Rob Deere ended up becoming my favorite Brewer almost immediately. He was traded to the Brewers in, I want to say, December of '85. I didn't know anything about him back then. There was no internet. I didn't have any sources to read up on him. But on opening day '86, the Brewers opened their season in Chicago against the White Sox. And Tom Seaver was pitching for the White Sox that day. And as I get older, I think the details get a little fuzzy. But what I remember was him hitting, he either hit 2 homers that day, or he homered and doubled, or homered and singled. But his first at-bat for the Brewers was a homer off Tom Seaver. And I was just instantly like, oh my God, this is my new favorite. And I was crushed when he left the Brewers. He actually signed a free agent contract in November of 90 to go to Detroit. But Rob Deere is my 5th player. I think an underrated player, actually. Yes, he was a power hitter, but he had a great arm. He could run the bases well for a bigger guy. I had the pleasure of getting to meet him several times in 2014-15. I did one of his camps. I actually was asked to coach one of his camps, but it never happened for a couple reasons. But Rob Deere's my 5, but again, could have very easily been number 1. Number 4, Gorman Thomas. The reason I have Gorman slightly ahead of Rob Deere, number 1, is because he was my first favorite. Gorman Thomas was traded to Cleveland in 1983, 1 year after being the home run champion and American League champion in 1982. It just crushed me at the time. I remember reading about it in the Journal and just didn't understand the concept of players being traded. I actually wrote in my book that I wrote in 2008, Two Loves, the story of a baseball polygamist. I said, if they could trade baseball players, could they trade family members? Could grandma be traded to the Volkies? Like, I didn't understand. So Gorman Thomas is my number 4. He didn't really have much of a stay in Cleveland. I think he was only there about 3 months, and then he signed a free agent contract with Seattle in '84. Didn't play much there. Was actually in '85 the American League Comeback Player of the Year. I think he hit 32 homers for the Mariners in '85. In '86, for whatever reason, just didn't play much. They cut him, and he actually came back to the Brewers in '86 to finish the season. So for about 3 months in '86, Gorman Thomas and Rob Deere were on the same Brewers team. But I like the fact that Gorman has become kind of an ambassador for the Brewers. He actually had his own corner. I think it was actually called Gorman's Corner or Gorman's Grill for a while at Miller Park. I'm not even 100% sure if that's still there, but I like the fact that he's kind of been like a face for the Brewers over the years. So Gorman Thomas at number 4. Number 3 is Satchel Paige. I've read many different books about Paige, and he's the one pitcher that obviously I never saw play that I would have loved to have seen play. Satchel Paige, just the stories about him, like barnstorming, how he would tell his fielders to sit down or come in because he knew he was going to strike everyone out. I would have loved to seen him in his prime in a major league uniform. He does represent the Cleveland Indians in the Utopian. That's the team he made his debut for in 1948. I believe, and if memory serves me, I think they won a World Series that year. He would later pitch with the St. Louis Browns. He actually had an appearance or two at the Kansas City A's at the age of 59. So I just love the mythic stories that I've read about him. Satchel Paige is my number 3. My number 2 is Willie Mays. I've been having this argument now for 30 years. When we talk about like greatest player of all time, which again is a completely different category than favorite player, but I've always said Willie Mays is the greatest player of all time. 5 tools, can beat you so many different ways. My argument for Mays over Ruth has always been that Ruth, and again, if I'm wrong on any of this, feel free to correct me, but Babe Ruth played in an era that there were no African American players, no Cuban players, no players of color whatsoever. I'm not sure how many sliders he saw. I know he played in parks that the dimensions weren't regulated, like it could be like 240 down the line. Babe Ruth to me is the he's the kind of the face of early baseball because he changed it as much as he did. Like he went from being a pitcher to an outfielder. I think the home run record at the time he broke it was like 140 homers. He hit 754 or 714 homers. So he definitely changed the game, but I don't know if he was the greatest player of all time. I don't know how well he would have done in the 50s and 60s. Whereas I think if Willie Mays played in Babe Ruth's era, he could have hit 1,000 homers and stolen 1,000 bases. So Willie Mays is my number two. The top player that I never got to see play, live, I guess, if you will. So he's my number two. And my favorite player of all time is Keith Hernandez. Keith Hernandez has had a unique baseball life. He was, all-star first baseman, two-time World Series champion, MVP in '79, batting champion. But what I loved about Keith Hernandez is he was like having a manager on the field. He is, in my opinion, the greatest fielding first baseman of all time. He should be in the Hall of Fame. We all know why he's not. We don't need to talk about that on the show. But Keith Hernandez has also created, in my opinion, a Hall of Fame broadcast career. I think he's part of the best booth in baseball with Gary Cohen and Ron Darling. I hope he gets consideration for the Hall of Fame for that. I just love how cerebral he is. He's written 3 or 4 books. There's actually a book that he wrote called Pure Baseball. And I think he wrote this, I think it's shortly after he retired, where he basically watched 2 games front to back. I think one was a National League game, one was an American League game. And he just commented on everything he saw. That's one of my favorite baseball books. I read it every summer. So you got to check that out. But Keith Hernandez is just like, he's everything I would want in a ball player. Like, I'm, even though I have Gorman Thomas and Rob Deere on this list, I wouldn't build my team around a player like that. I would build my team on someone that made contact, was heads up on the field. When I get asked this question, this is the most common name that pops up. Keith Hernandez, my favorite player of all time. So I'd love to hear yours. We got some comments here. Facebook users in the building. He says, good morning. Facebook user also says, I can't believe Robin Yount isn't in your top 5. Robin Yount, I mean, again, like, the reason he's not in my top 5, I think he was just so good at what he did. Like, I tended as a kid to like the players that were, I don't want to say lesser than, but I don't know. Maybe I couldn't relate to him as much. He was so good. I mean, Robin Yount won an MVP at shortstop and center field, and I have nothing but great memories of Robin Yount. He never was my favorite at any given time, though. Because when I started watching in '83, I instantly became a Gorman Thomas fan. In '86, Rob Deere became my favorite. And by the time Rob Deere left, Yount's skill set had kind of diminished a little bit. So, yeah, Robin Yount was never my favorite Brewer at any given time. But, I mean, again, looking back, just an amazing career. I would have loved to see Robin Yount's career start from the beginning. I think it would have been interesting to see him develop. I know he won the MVP in '82, but like from '74 to '81, I don't think he had a season where he hit 20 homers or even drove in 100 runs. So '82 was kind of that blossoming period for Yount. And then he won the MVP in '89 as a center fielder. I love Yount. I've met him a couple of times too. Always fun to talk to. But again, that list is pretty trivial. There might be a day I wake up and I consider him in my top 5. Stan Phillips says Keith Hernandez, his favorite player of all time, baseball personality as well. Yeah. So I think the reason Hernandez is one for me is because I loved him as a player, but man, is he good in the booth. I know he's very polarizing. Some people don't think he's very good. I think he's the greatest color man of all time in baseball. He's just so good, and putting him with Ron Darling, just a completely different personality, I just think makes that booth so good. And Gary Cohen is kind of the glue that pulls that together. Stan also says pure baseball is great. So many unique insights. For example, when a hitter hits a ball hard and pulls it way foul, it usually means the pitcher is losing his stuff and a hitter just needs to adjust. Yeah, I mean, his insights in that book, it's I don't know if it's my favorite baseball book ever, but it's probably the book I recommend the most, because if you're a younger player, you can learn a lot from reading that book. But yeah, I just love the inside baseball, if you will, that I get from that book. I've got a couple books, newer books that I'm going to be reading in the next couple weeks to months. But as we get closer to the World Series, I'm definitely going to read this one again. And actually, I think if Andrew's watching, so I've done a poor job with trivia. Last year, everyone won books, and Greg has his. And I haven't mailed JD's yet. He has 3 coming. Andrew has a book coming. Mitch has 2 books. Mitch and I, we got to meet here in Grafton at some point. But I failed to write down who won what book. I think someone won Pure Baseball. I know JD won Glory of Their Times, Brian Wright's Mets book. And then I believe someone won, Mitch won Keith Hernandez autobiography, and then a coffee table book. So either Andrew or JD won Pure Baseball, and then the other guy won Summer of Beer and Whiskey. So if you guys can help me straighten that out, I've got the books in a pile. I just need to get those out to you guys. But yeah, Pure Baseball is definitely a read that I think you guys should check out. All right, so I think we had fun today with the first top 5 players of all time. If you're watching this later, let me know what your top 5 are, and we'll be back next Wednesday with another top 5. Utopian Cafe coming back tomorrow at 7 a.m. We've got Orioles and Blue Jays, or Orioles hosting Blue Jays tomorrow on Xbox. That'll be in the afternoon. Major League Baseball's the Field of Dreams game is going to be tomorrow night. Very excited about that. The Utopian Baseball Universe had a Field of Dreams game last summer when we didn't know that there was going to be baseball. We had Yankees and White Sox last summer. So this year we're doing a Field of Dreams game as well. Let me actually look to see who the participants are, because I forget, and it's I'm just an old man. Brewers at White Sox, and that's going to be September 20th. We moved it. I forget the reason why we moved it, but it's going to be Brewers and White Sox is our Field of Dreams game this year. So again, we'll see you tomorrow in the cafe at 7 a.m. Stan Phillips will join me at 7:30 on Friday. And then we'll have Blue Jays Orioles tomorrow, probably about 1 o'clock or so. So thanks for joining me today in the cafe. Wednesdays will be fun going forward. Not that they weren't fun, but they're going to be a little bit more fun going forward. Everyone have a good day, and we will see you tomorrow in the cafe.